MA, New Delhi, and started functioning as its local resource center.
KMA's objectives were well crafted right from the beginning. It was a journey with a purpose to build a strong business community through healthy interaction between corporate leaders and management gurus. This has helped many companies to surge ahead with sound professional management practices.
A growing economy often ushers in new trends in the market. Regular seminars and interactive workshops are conducted by KMA to keep up with the ever-changing market requirements.
A 2-day annual management convention is conducted during the first quarter of every year, which is attended by over 1,000 delegates from all across Kerala. Eminent speakers of national and international repute lead this prestigious event.
KMA's many successful initiatives are very popular among its members. Some such initiatives are
Evening lectures by eminent people,
CEO Conclave,
Management Students Forum,
Young Managers Forum,
sector-specific seminars.
Women Managers Forum.
KMA is active in the social media networking sites and also has a comprehensive website www.kma.org.in.
KMA is managed by a managing committee comprising of prominent industry and corporate heads and functions at its own premises at Panambali Nagar, Cochin, which also houses spacious conference halls, classrooms and a library.
Based on their yearly performance, corporate companies are awarded KMA's Excellence Awards in 5 different categories, which promote healthy competition for excellence among members.
Membership. A membership in KMA offers opportunities to interact with the top management leaders in Kerala to share knowledge and skills, thereby commanding respect and credibility to your organization. Corporate membership is open to business houses, government enterprises, and educational institutions, etc.
Any individual who meets the norms set by KMA can enroll as life members on payment of the fees as a lump sum and half the fee for a senior citizen.
For more details, please contact Executive Director, Kerala Management Association.
Good evening and a warm welcome to all the invited guests, KMA leaders and members. Let us begin this special event commemorating the 66th Foundation Day of All India Management Association as well as the 16th National Management Day today with a minute silence and pray to Almighty that we all remain safe and healthy and all of us overcome these challenging times. Continue to be seated wherever you are and close your eyes for a minute. Thank you and good evening once again to our guests of the evening, former IMA President and a corporate doyen of our times, Mr. R. Gopalakrishnan, his younger brother and yet another corporate mentor and guru, Mr. R. Srinivasan, our own past President and Program Committee Chair at KMA, Mr. S.R. Nair, who is also the moderator of this session, past presidents, Mr. A.K. Nair, Mr. Vivek Krishna Govind, and others whom I cannot see on the screen. Senior Vice President Nirmala Lili, Vice President A. Balakrishnan, Honorary Secretary, Chartered Accountant Joman George, other Managing Committee members, members of KMA and other LMAs, students and invited guests. Today we are so fortunate to have this program when we have a hugely respected former IMA President himself addressing us, while IMA is celebrating its 66th Foundation Day and all of us from the management fraternity are commemorating the 16th National Management Day. When Rupa Publishers requested us to have this program to launch the latest book written by these two corporate leaders, we took it as an opportunity to befittingly celebrate the Management Day at KMA by having these distinguished speakers address us? Well, we could be one among the very few who could get to hear from the horse's mouth with regard to this new book that they have penned together. But most importantly, it is always a feast to listen to Mr. R. Gopalakrishnan, whom we have had the privilege of having at KMA and addressing us on many big occasions in the past too. And today it's a double joy as we have his younger brother too accompanying him while he interacts with us, explaining to us the pivots of career success, unleashing people power. Well, this is how KMA has been pulling on in these troubled times to keep our members engaged, remain positive, and provide with meaningful deliberations and events of utility. In spite of all the troubles and disruptions caused by the pandemic, KMA has been continuously bringing to you very many events of purpose on a consistent basis. The program committee led by Mr. S.R. Nair had conceived regular leader talks lecture series. In fact, 22 such leaders addressing till now this year. StartCon discussion series presenting successful startup companies featuring 26 such individuals who are making it big with their startup ideas this far. Very meaningful and focused women managers forum activities at least once a month, and many management education programs we were trying to serve suiting everyone's palate. We even conducted a week-long management week celebrations, a management students convention with over 800 B school students participating, 3 memorial lectures with exceptional speakers, organized a virtual run, the KMA run, with nearly 1,000 participants from across the country propagating our theme of responsible management, and also conducted one digital summit in hybrid format. In addition to this, we have started a series of workshops for the MSME sector with an opening meet that was inaugurated by the State Industries Minister, Mr. P. Rajiv himself, and continuing with specific workshops enlightening the participants on various schemes, benefits, and offers available with central, state, and banking institutions. We also instituted a new event titled Rendezvous with the CEO, a program organized by the KMA CEO Forum, which features an interactive session with CEOs of national repute who have made significant and remarkable achievements against all odds to share their success stories with our members. The leadership seminar, jointly organized with Rotary International, was conducted in a hybrid format with over 500 participants, and we had some of the finest speakers, including the premier Indian scientist Padma Vibhushan, Dr. R.A. Mashelkar, addressing the delegates. We also had the annual CSR Conclave 2021, again in hybrid format with more than 100 delegates and the KMA CSR Award winners present physically, while the event had State Industries Minister Mr. P. Rajiv and some of the renowned corporate chieftains explaining the effective ways of doing CSR projects, and KMA felicitating in person the Keralite woman of substance in social service, Sister Lucy Kurian, founder and director of Maher Foundation, for winning the coveted Jawaharlal Bajaj Award for social service. Well, as the saying goes, when the going gets tough, the tough gets going, and that's exactly what KMA did, capitalizing on the general lull due to the pandemic times. We effectively used our secretariat team to complete the ISO certification for KMA, making us one of the rare management institutions in the country who have this recognition of an ISO certification. We also initiated the reconstruction or the massive renovation works at the KMA House, our own office at Panampally Nagar, by converting the building into an iconic structure with the most modern convention facilities. If everything goes well, we expect to have the new building and convention center inaugurated by early next month, in all probabilities by the Honorable Chief Minister of Kerala, Sri Pinarayi Vijayan. We'll have some of the renowned names of Kerala, the Lulu Financial Holdings, Cochin Shipyard, Geojit Group, Agape Diagnostics, Muthoot Group, SRK Group, Medivision Labs, and many more such successful corporates lending support as the patrons for this new building by branding individual halls in their names and also having their logos etched on the wall of fame for good. But the most important initiative that we would like to emphasize is the introduction of the KMA Scholarship for financially challenged students for their higher studies. This is going to be an ongoing scheme of funding the education of poor students by utilizing CSR funds of corporates and helping these students in their pursuit of higher studies, especially that in management. Well, it is indeed fulfilling to note that all such new initiatives and the encouraging responses that KMA received from our members and delegates have played a big role in bringing IMA's two of the most coveted awards of the year, the Best LMA Award of the Year of the country and the Most Improved LMA of the Year award to KMA. Thank you all for your wholehearted support. Well, now coming to today's special event, commemorating the 16th National Management Day at KMA, we have a special book launch session where the distinguished authors and orators, Mr. R. Gopalakrishnan and Mr. R. Srinivasan, introducing to us their new book, Pivots for Career Success, Unleashing People Power. Without much ado, let me, on behalf of the Managing Committee at KMA and all present here, formally welcome Mr. R. Gopalakrishnan and Mr. R. Srinivasan to this special book launch session at KMA. I also extend a hearty welcome to all the past presidents of KMA present here, members of the Managing Committee and Executive Committee, Senior Vice President, Vice President, Honorary Secretary, members of KMA and other LMAs, student members, members of the media, and all invited guests to this session which is about to begin. So without further ado, let me invite our Program Committee Chair, Mr. S.R. Nair, to formally introduce the authors or the speakers and also take us through the session. We'll have a formal display of the book here, symbolizing the launch of the book, and thereafter, Mr. S.R. Nair will take us through the session. For those of you who do not know him well, he is a senior past president of KMA and is a renowned corporate mentor, business coach, author, blogger, and thinker who turned his focus to academia after a successful stint as an IT entrepreneur for many years. Over to SR now to formally introduce our guest leaders and also launch the book and to take you through the session, including the Q&A. Thank you all.
Thank you, President Madhav, respected authors, all those who are part of this meeting, ladies and gentlemen. I would introduce Mr. R. Gopalakrishnan, thereafter Mr. R. Srinivasan. Post that, we will do the symbolic launch of the book by the two authors, President of KMA and myself, holding the book in front of us, and then hand over to the two authors to say a few words about the book and thereafter read some pages of the book. And thereafter engage them with a conversation on the content of the book. And that is generally about it. Okay, let me take the privilege of introducing Mr. R. Gopalakrishnan. He is a graduate in physics and a BTech in electronics from IIT Kharagpur with an advanced management program from Harvard Business School. He joined Hindustan Lever as a management trainee in 1967, gone through the whole gamut of all corporate function, that is IT, sales, exports, corporate, and all CXO functions. Chairman of the Unilever Arabia, based at Jeddah, Managing Director of Brookbond Lipton, Vice Chairman of Hindustan Lever Limited, Director of Tata Sons for several years, and Director of several Tata Group of companies, Independent Director of Castrol India, and Independent Director of Hema Holding PLC at Sri Lanka, orator, speaker, author, professor at SP Jain as well as IIT Kharagpur, past president of IMA, 18 books to his credit. This is the 1820s that what we are introducing, 17th already done. And some of his books are titled the Made in India Manager, Crash Lessons for the Entry and Exit of CEOs, Doodles of Leadership, When the Penny Drops, The Case of Bonsai Manager, all. Okay, now let me take the privilege of introducing Mr. R. Srinivasan, who is a younger brother of Mr. R. Gopalakrishnan. Okay, he's a graduate of again IIT Kharagpur in the year 1974. Okay, he started his career as a management trainee with ITC and spent all his professional years in ITC for about close to 36 years. He worked in all the factories of ITC, practically the cigarette factory, the paperboard factory, the match factory, the stationery manufacturing, the printing and packaging division, and all over the country, some of them being at Madras, Chennai, Hyderabad, Saharanpur, Munger, and all over the place. Okay. And director, CEO, vice chairman, etc. of many of the ITC subsidiaries. Okay. Served long term in ITC corporate management committee called CMC. Okay. Just under the ITC board with about 5 CEOs of 13 groups, companies reporting to him. Had been part of the CA National Committee and the governing body of the Indian Institute of Packaging, and member of Cumpro Foundation, conceptualized by the quality guru, Dr. Johari. And I understand that this book that is called The Pivots for Career Success, it is his first book, jointly written with his elder brother, RG. RG stands for R. Gopalakrishnan. We will now display the book by the two authors, as well as KMA President will join me doing that. Post this, we will please. Applause is allowed actually. Right. Okay. Thank you very much. I would now request Mr. R. Gopalakrishnan to say a few words as well as read 1 or 2 pages of the book. Thank you, sir. Please go ahead. All yours.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Nair and Mr. Madhav Chandran. Actually, I should start by acknowledging the great hospitality of KMA, which I have been privileged to enjoy more than once. And I have many friends there, like Rajan. I mean, everybody is a Nair, so I just say the first name so that it makes it easy for people to understand. Um, and I feel I'm back amongst friends, though it's through Zoom and not in person. And all my books, I've written not 18 but 17. 18th is not yet got admission in the maternity ward of the hospital, so it'll take some time. Uh, uh, all my 17 books, probably at least 7 or 10 have been launched by KMA. And that's been a touch of Lakshmi for me, a good luck, because the books have done reasonably well. And I therefore look forward very much to the friendship and the professionalism of KMA. And I must comment that compared to my very first visit to Kerala Management Association, it must be 10 years ago, 12 years ago, the
It was in
enormous strides.
1999, sir. It was in
Oh,
1999.
1999, so it's 20
Yes.
years ago.
Yes.
It is the enormous strides taken by KMA with all the active participation and support of the past presidents and committee members is truly impressive. And I'm delighted to hear from Madhav that you got the LMA award, the most improved award. I know that Ahmedabad and Madras management used to take the most active LMA award year after year. And when I was the president, I said, can you find a way that somebody else can also participate in this? But they said others must improve. But congratulations to KMA. My best wishes. Um, what I thought may be useful, Mr. SRN said, I should say a few words. But when you've taken the trouble, it's taken us about 2.5 years to write this book. And it has only 200 pages, but we have spent a lot of our time and energy. I thought I might give you a little bit of a context of how this book came and why it is important. And I would request, because it's possible that many management students are not able to attend this evening, but if there's a recording, Madhav, I would request be sent. There is no IPR on this. Please send it to the management colleges.
We'll do that. We'll do that.
Many of them I have met when I was coming, and they would always invite me to come to some place for talking to the students. But this book is really meant for very young people and meant for older people. So don't get me wrong. But if the young people miss it, I think it will be a great pity. You know, why do I say this? Because he happens to be my brother, but actually I should keep referring to him as my co-author. Um, between us, we have about 75 years of corporate experience. Myself, 40 years, he 35 years in different. And he's worked in ITC and its subsidiaries. I have worked in Unilever and its subsidiaries and Tata and its subsidiaries. We have worked as young management trainees, green in the years, and climbed the grease pole of the corporate ladder, gradually slipping down a little bit. And we have also walked in the richly carpeted boardrooms or management committee rooms of our companies. So we have grappled with the question, what happens to all this experience that you've had? You know, when all of us have a career, it doesn't matter whether you're in government or in army or navy. I'm glad to see there are some naval and brigadiers and so on in this. Vice Admiral Muralidharan is there. You have a very rich experience, and you have acquired a certain amount of assets, wealth, if I may use the word, though what we have saved is probably not qualified as wealth in the modern times. A certain amount of savings to live comfortably when you're older. And that is usually kept by most of us for our family and a little bit of charity here and there. But we have a second wealth which we acquire, and that is the wealth of our experience. I call it experiential wealth. And living not so far away from the Chandanwadi cemetery of Bombay, I have noticed that all that experiential wealth goes to the crematorium intact and is burnt. And Chandanwadi is only one such crematorium. There are many such crematoriums where people's experiential wealth is cremated, or if it's a cemetery, buried. And it has always interested me to ask myself, how can you use this experiential wealth to be given? Because financial wealth, if you give away, you're left with less. But experiential wealth, the more you give, the more you have. It is not something that diminishes. Now, most people I have met, and that includes many in this audience, will probably argue, as I have heard in person with many people, that, Arey, what have I done so big? I ran a small scale unit, I ran a factory here, I marketed some plastic buckets. Who's interested in my experience? And when I reflect on it, now that I'm at the age I am, I find that that is not a correct argument. Every human being has a life that is worth telling to somebody, maybe not to the whole world. And every human being has an experience which is worth sharing with somebody, maybe not the whole world. And I recall that I have been very inspired by public figures. You know, you say Mahatma Gandhi, and it's very inspiring, Jawaharlal Nehru. But I feel instructed by people who are close to me. My late father, my professor, people whom I've reached out and touched. And that is there's a big difference between inspiration and instruction. And I think it's very important that senior members, and I request KMA to think about the point I'm making. If I can help in any way, I'm very happy to help, but you're very talented people in KMA, to try to convert. You see, our experience is like food grain kept in a warehouse. It's quite useless as it is. As we all know, food corporation warehouse comes handy only in an emergency. But if you have to take that, you have to clean it up, and you have to grind it and make something out of it for it to be useful to somebody else. And that's what you have to do with this warehouse, which contains the silos, which contain our experience. Take it out, slice and dice it, clean it, package it, and present it to people so that it's memorable, if not usable. And that's exactly what my co-author and I have done with this book. We sat down and discussed with us, what can we do about it? In a small way. We are not trying to get the Pulitzer Prize or anything. Maybe several thousand young people will read it, and we are not depending on the royalty of the book for us to get our next meal, but it's a pleasure of sharing. And I think it's very useful if management associations would consider, because what this country really lacks is an approach to sustainable, honest enterprise. From the time we got independence, we have been grappling with how to coexist with industry. From extreme socialism and left thinking to the other extreme, we have seen things moving. But I think the heart of a good society, which Kerala to Kashmir, Assam to Maharashtra we deserve, is honest and sensible enterprise, because that generates the resources for the country to invest in education, in culture, in health, and that's what leads to people's enjoyment. So we have taken this exercise very seriously, and we said that best thing is experience teaches you what classrooms do not teach you. You can learn how to improve productivity. You can learn how to measure work. You can learn how to brand a product, and you can learn how to make a balance sheet and a profit and loss account in a classroom. But what you cannot learn in a classroom is what experience teaches you. And all of us, many of us are parents or grandparents, and we know how difficult it is to attract the young people's attention, to make them take us seriously, because they think there's nothing to learn from this oldie. What we did was to sit down and slice and dice our experiences and capture 30 items of lessons, exactly 30, which we put into 10 categories. Understanding the self, understanding relationships, and understanding the context. And those are the three factors, those are the three worlds we live in. I'm talking to you now in the context is it's a professional organization I'm talking to, and I speak professionally. When I finish this call, I will go and talk to my wife or my family, and that's my personal relationship. And early in the morning, when I get up, I will be in my own world, myself. And I live, and all of us, in fact, live in all these three worlds. And it's the ability world, in your world of relationships and your world of the context that gives us peace of mind. So we took our 30 lessons and put them into these three categories. So there are 10 in each. And then we said, we are not going to give Gyan because IIM Kozhikode can do that well. I don't know if Devashish is on this call, but please do give a video to Devashish, convey my compliments and tell him that if you could show it to students, it will be nice. You know, the amount of uh, um, experiences that we had. So you almost have 50 or 60 experiences related here. They are common experiences. Let me assure you, they are not dramatic. But that's what you learn from. That's what instructs. My father and my professor were not dramatic people. But when I listen to Martin Luther King, he's dramatic. One inspires me, one instructs me. So instruction comes out of no drama. And that's what we have tried to put together here. And knowledge, I spent the year trying to acquire more and more knowledge by becoming member of Kerala Management Association or Calcutta Management Association, by attending more classes, by attending IIM, by going to Harvard, to acquire more and more knowledge, teachable and usable knowledge. But then when we were much older, we said, really what matters in effectiveness is learning what nobody teaches you, human relations. And there's a whole subject out there which nobody teaches you. You learn all by yourself because you trial and error. And so we have captured unleashing human potential as the byline of our book and taken common experiences. Say, hey, I've been down that road before. I have had to deal with a difficult colleague, with a difficult boss, with somebody who took away the credit from me. And I have also dealt with how to handle it in the future. So that is the reason why we have written this book. And Mr. SRN said we should read something. I'm not going to actually read it out, because I'm just going to narrate it. I'm going to take one of these. It's called The Power of Humility. And it is not a jnana on humility. Why can't we all be like Mahatma Gandhi? That you don't need me to tell you. 100 people must have told you already. Under the understanding self, we have covered one chapter called The Power of Humility. And in this, I have narrated my experiences. As Madhav knows and Madhav said, I joined Hindustan Lever in 1967, which is from a perspective of young people a long, long time ago. I joined in the computer department and I was a geek. I had studied physics honors, I had studied electronics. I was probably amongst the very early graduates in information technology or electronic data processing, as it was called. And when I went to the interview, the marketing director said, we think you'll make a good marketing guy. Would you join Hindustan Lever in the marketing department? And I acted very snobbish, to be honest, when I think back. I said, I haven't studied physics and engineering to join marketing department to sell soap and so on. Anyway, he said, you go and do computers, but if you ever feel bored, come back and knock on my door. As it so happened, 1967 to 1971, I did stay in the computer department, but those computers were very different from what we use today, vastly different. Just like designing a factory or a building is so different today compared to civil and structural engineering that we used to learn long ago. I then knocked on the door and he said, yes, I'm very happy to have you in the marketing department, but you'll have to start all over again. I want you to go and work as a van salesman and go to small little markets and sell dalda and soap. I had to get over my initial inhibition, but I did that. And it stood me in great stead because as the admiral and the brigadier who are on this call will confirm to you, you can't lead your battalion if you don't know the pains of the soldier. That's the first thing they teach you when you join the defense forces. So you can't be the factory manager if you don't understand the pain of the factory worker. You can't be a general sales manager or a marketing director if you don't understand the pain of what the salesman's routine is. And many years later, I had an experience where some salesman who's a union leader actually challenged me. He says, I bet you can't do this. And I rolled up my sleeves and I did it. I didn't do a great job, but the fact that I was willing to do it taught me the power of humility and taught him the power of demonstration. So that is one story that is narrated here. The second story which I like to narrate about the power of humility and narrated in this book is after 20 years, I was lucky. I was appointed as the director of Hindustan Lever. And I was given the portfolio of the director for exports. And there was a chairman called Ashok Ganguly, who I think has been to KMA also, but perhaps 25 years ago. And I was obviously very pleased. At 41, 42, you're appointed as the director of Hindustan Lever. Now, one of the things that is a characteristic of the exports in those days, Rajan knows this because he used to be also in the company at that time, was we could not export soap and detergents so much. So we took in unconventional from a Unilever point of view. You know, carpets, hand-knotted carpets from Badohi and Banaras, textiles, shrimp from Kerala. That's when I visited Kerala so many times to Allapura and to various places. And I had to learn those trades, which is a bit difficult. So we recruited specialists, and we recruited one such specialist into our garment business. And I had been trained to believe that great leaders delegate and get other people to work. And I delegated, and but what I failed to understand is the flip side of delegation is accountability. You can delegate, but you must delegate and also check. I failed to do that. And one of the people we recruited, mid-career recruits in the garment business, took me and the company for a ride, and we could not find over $500,000. Now, that may seem a very small amount with valuations reaching $1 billion nowadays. But I can tell you, with the FERA and all that stuff in those days, it was terrifying not to find $500,000. You know what happened? I had a choice. I thought about it. My throat was dry. It is in my adult age, I think the first time I was sort of nervous. I said, I can wait for some more time to get more facts, because there's never an end to the facts you can get. My second choice was to push it under the carpet, hoping it would go away. My third choice was to go to my chairman, who was a person called Ashok Ganguly, and those who know him know that he could be quite a tough guy. He came out through the factory system, and factory people are known to be sort of pretty tough guys. I decided to do the third one, because I said it's rather look a fool to one chairman than look like a fool to the whole world. And I showed him that I was vulnerable, not by conscious choice. I was vulnerable. The thought of enforcement directorate coming and looking for $500,000 in my house, which wasn't there, was terrifying. The thought that I would be on the front page of a newspaper saying this guy lost $500,000 was terrifying. ITC had an experience of FERA raids soon after, 10 years later, and I'm sure Mr. Srinivasan can say a few words about how terrifying it can be for people in the company, not only the guys who got raided. If this current problem of the National Stock Exchange, Chitra Ramakrishna and her spiritual guru in Himalayas, bizarre though it may sound, it came up 6 years ago, but somebody's been laundering it under the carpet. I don't know why it came out now. But I found that if you show vulnerability, everybody wants to help you. It's only when you show arrogance that they don't want to help you, they want to fix you. So I went to my chairman, I said, I'm a director, a youngest director at this stage in the board, and I don't know what's happened. I've goofed. He said, sit down, have a glass of water. Tell me, what do you know? I said, I know less than what I don't know. He said, that is true of all of life. Tell me. Then he got in the finance director, the legal director, the company secretary, and by God, they really helped me to understand technicalities and extreme sort of legal interpretations. It took us about 9 months and we got through it. But it left an overarching lesson in my mind. When you goofed, admit it. If you show vulnerability, you're not a weak leader, you're a strong leader. Strong leaders don't have to show that they are got a 52-inch chest. Occasionally, your chest does become 32 inches. And when that happens, keep your head down and be humble. So that's one. It's taken about 3-4 pages to tell these two stories. And instead of reading it out, I thought I would tell you the essence. I think they are very, very practical, heartwarming stories. And stories, as our grandmothers told us, are always memorable. It is bhashan, giving long lectures, which our professors tend to do, which is not memorable. So I would like to stop here and ask my co-author to perhaps either read out or share some of his thoughts, and then we can open it up, Mr. Nair, to Mr. SRN, to the audience. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. To Mr. Srinivasan, please.
Unmute.
You need to unmute, Mr. Yeah. Yes, that's right. Okay.
Is it okay now? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
We can hear you.
Yeah. Friends at KMA and listeners, thank you very much for your patience. Gopal mentioned that we wrote this book, keeping the practitioner in mind, and the practitioner across a wide range of disciplines. The professional manager, certainly, but also the professional in the armed services who come to our rescue every time there's a crisis. Also the professionals in the civil services who have been extraordinary in terms of managing the country during changing times. So the focus was on the professional who has to get things done and deliver and reliably perform despite all sorts of constraints. To use a humorous tennis analogy, a coach comes and teaches you the forehand, then teaches you the backhand, then teaches you the service, then gives you a gentle push and said, get there and start playing matches and play to win. And that's the context. So we restricted the anecdotes to 30, and I will quickly run through some of them to give a real life feeling to all that we have tried to write and compress into this book, which I hope will be of some value to the reading public. I want to capture your attention, since we've talked about sports and we talked about energy, and ask you, who is Eileen Gu, or Gu Eileen? And what does the Olympic gold in skiing, big air, at the China Olympics mean to us? And why is it important to pivots? Eileen Gu is an 18-and-a-half-year-old girl, stays in California, and she just did a 16:20 in winning the big air freestyle skiing competition and won the Olympic gold. What is a 16:20? It's up in the air, a drop of 155 feet, and then 4 rounds of 360 degrees, which is 1440, and then a half round of 180 before you fall on your feet on the skis and win. Fantastic achievement. Relevant because it's been proven by research and neurobiology that these extreme adventure athletes are always in a state of flow. And flow is important for us, whether we call it management jargon or otherwise. Dr. Mihai, Csikszentmihalyi, a Hungarian-American psychologist, has done the most extensive study of what contributes to happiness. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. And in his study, he found that 71% of people are disconnected. They are not miserable, but they are not happy either. So what is it that can contribute to flow? Because all of us experience flow in different stages, in different phases. From a young child playing with a Lego block, to a youngster playing with a computer game completely absorbed, to a person lost in music, to a sportsman in adventure sports at the extreme end, surfing or skiing. At that instant of time, they are completely absorbed in the task, coping with the challenge to skill ratio, which Csikszentmihalyi said should ideally be 4%. Not so difficult that the person is driven into an anxiety syndrome and doesn't even attempt the task. And not so easy as to cause boredom, complacency, or sheer brazen overconfidence. And that is a critical theme of this book that we have talked about. We need passionate managers, and we need their energy and their devotion to making things work. And part of the book and part of the anecdote also talks about it. I would like to quickly relate 3 anecdotes which might be reflective of that in completely different situations. And I'd like to take an example in the Munger factory in Bihar. Munger, as many people might know, is otherwise and unfortunately known for the largest number of murders, kidnappings, caste wars, and prejudices. And yet, in that factory, a printing factory located within a larger cigarette factory, we managed to get a mini settlement signed for staggered breaks and continuous run that broke all records. The union office bearers refused to sign it because they said it's a mini settlement, and unless it applies to the entire population, we can't do this. But they signed it finally and said we will not come anywhere near implementation. The sheer challenge and opportunity of talking to people right across the board, about 400 of them, who said and expressed the desire to go ahead, even when we seemed to be heartbroken and progress did not seem to be getting made, showed us that management designed a 10% improvement in the system based on arithmetical calculations. What we got was between 30 to 50%, and outstanding productivity, and outstanding unleashing of people's energies, which completely enraptured us in admiration that such achievements were possible in a way out of the way place. I'd like to mention an ISO 9000 effort that took place 10 to 12 years later. A passionate manager, the works manager, wanted to go ahead with it, although the entire complex had not gone ahead with it. And this was problematic because the office bearers often said, you are making people do harsh things, which is not the right thing to do. In any case, despite all these objections, the works manager went ahead with the right support and then invited me to come across for the function where they were going to be conferred the ISO 9000. And with your permission, I'm going to break into a little bit of local flavor to tell you what it was. The president, Mr. Rambadan Rai, the union president, came across to address the crowd. And he said, अगर आपको लड़ना है तो कौन चीज से लड़िएगा, लाठी से या AK-47 से? ये जो ISO 9000 है, ये आपके हाथ में एक AK-47 है. And there was wild applause. As he sat down, I turned to him and said, look, we're in a peaceful industrial atmosphere. Why did you have to refer to AK-47? We know. He said, घबराइए नहीं, यहाँ के लोग समझ जाएंगे. So here was another case where despite severe objections, we managed to get through. I'd like to take you to the southern part of the country, to Tiruvallur in North Chennai, where we had a packaging and printing factory that experienced adversity and violence soon after 9/11, even as we were in conciliation with the Labor Department of the government of Tamil Nadu. So managers were hurt, machines were damaged. It seemed desolate and sad. And we spun out of this entire crisis and adversity. We had to take hygienic actions to clean up the place. And then we did a novel change in terms of signing an agreement again with about 400 or 450 people directly representing themselves and representing the union collectively. And it was a smashing success. A key factor and challenge here was to get managers to talk to people in groups of 20, use the blackboard, explain what was there in the agreement, which meant that irrespective of function, the people who were fielding questions had to know how's bonus calculated. Oh, this chap was asking me about variable DNS allowance. How do I answer that? And in the process of this cleaning up, managers got prepared to answer and felt a lot more confident walking through the floor. And the workmen felt, I compared what that guy said in that department on that session with what happened here. And it sounds pretty good. So that was the first action. And then a whole lot of actions thereafter to raise the standard and raise the motivation. I'm not going to run into all of them, whether it was computer-based tutorials, whether it was going in for an IQRS level 8, which was equivalent to the Deming Award, whether it was implementing SAP in record time. But I'd like to illustrate one simple point of pride. The packaging and printing exhibition, largest in the world, that takes place every 4 years, takes place at a place in Dusseldorf in Germany at the Drupa exhibition. And when the person, the Swiss marketeer, was presenting his, describing the features of the Bob schematic, he touched the screen and he said, I'd like to take you now live and show you a machine running in Tiruvallur in North Chennai, and take a look at how it's running, how it's being managed, and what the speed of the machine is. And the video zoomed in on the speed, running at maximum speed. And that was an absolute sellout. Not only to the people watching the exhibition saying, wow, could this be happening in India? But to our people who said, I'm on that live stream at the Drupa exhibition and people are watching us. So spick and span, clean, going great guns. The third example I'd like to share is the paperboard factory at Bhadrachalam, a backward integration of ITC into the core sector, and a successful one. But it was passing through some difficulties in the 90s with respect to safety and accidents, and we needed to do something about it. I'll relate a simple incident, not so simple when you look at the consequences. A truck driver driving day and night comes with coal from Jharia all the way to Bhadrachalam, parks the vehicle on an incline, puts the brake on, then tells his young attendant, look, I'll go and have a wash because the weighbridge is not yet ready for us to take the truck. You be here. I'll come back in half an hour and then you can go. He goes, has a wash, has a little bit of breakfast, comes back, looks around for the attendant, can't find him, gets into the driver's seat, releases the brake, and then shockingly drives over the attendant. Poor chap, a 19-year-old boy sleeping underneath the truck because it was less hot. It gave him a shade, and he felt he would not be disturbed by others. Whether it happens inside the mill or outside the mill, it now became our responsibility to prevent these things from happening. And without attempting to be boastful, let me give you an example of personal protective equipment. I climbed the 30-foot vertical ladder using a fall arrestor. As I got to the first platform, I found 3 youngsters there of 18, 19 years old. They are always the people who are working at heights. And I saw something blue and yellow hanging on their dress. And I said, what is that? And they said, I could make out straight away that they were not local. And when I asked them, they said, we are from Balia, we are from Devariya. And I knew that was East UP. And I talked to them in Hindi and said, ye kya pehan ke rakha hai? And they said casually, suna hai koi aa rahe hain. And I said, do you realize that you've not attached the fall arrestor correctly? It's hanging loose. And I showed them how to correct it. And I said, you guys could be my kids, but you're taking a reckless risk in working at 30 feet. Just look down and see what awaits you if you slip and fall and the fall arrestor is not attached properly. I gave that as an example to say that it was not just me making a contribution, but it was the mobilization of the entire paperboard division, the CEO, the CEO, the COO, the mill manager, the chief of safety, the safety managers in various locations, and they did a wonderful job. As time went on, a proposal was made to apply for the British Safety Council Sword of Honor. And after much debate, people said, okay, let's go. And I'm happy to state that with 10 years of working, the Madrachalam Mill achieved the Sword of Honor. Not to say that that was an excuse for leaning back and relaxing, but it conveyed the point that high and low, across the board, across functions, and across departments. A paper mill, I must point out to you, is a huge site of 500 acres with coal bunkers, a soda recovery boiler, a main cogeneration boiler, and so on. And it's really tough to keep track of what's happening at each of these spots all the time. So we plastered the place with CCTVs. The union objected. The CEO and the COO asked me to spend some time with them and said that we are stepping out. You have 10 or 15 minutes if you can meet them. And I just read out from my phone and said, where were you when XYZ died? And where was I? And where were we as management? Finally, we grieved over a 19-year-old boy who died on our site, irrespective of whether he was a contractor's man or an employee. And the matter ended. Suddenly, they put out their hands, shook hands, and said, we are with you. I said, I need your support in Telugu for communication, where you are far, far better than me, to get this message across to everybody and to make sure that protective equipment is worn and to make sure that safety is followed. So those were the three anecdotes. I think I will take the indulgence of just 5 more minutes to quickly cover some of the other areas. Can we wait indefinitely?
Excuse me, sir, can that be on the questions? We can ask you some questions, anecdotes as well.
Yes, certainly.
Is that okay with you?
Yes, perfectly.
Thank you.
I'll stop then.
Thank
I'll
you
stop
very
then.
Yeah, thank you,
Okay.
sir. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Okay. Yeah. There could be questions from you as well, audience. In case you have the questions, we can put it in the chat mode, and time permits, I will actually take it and identify and ask this question. As Mr. Gopalakrishnan had said that in the content space, he said the 3 areas: understanding self, understanding others, and understanding the context. Each 10 chapters each, with plenty of anecdotes. And knowing Mr. Gopalakrishnan, he takes us through a very poetic English, Shakespearean language, whereas Mr. Srinivasan is more upfront and very straight in terms of the communication. But it's two brothers. They have actually mixed it so nicely with Mr. Gopalakrishnan going the Shakespearean way. And now we start one question on this RG, that is about in the preface itself. I'll just read this in the preface. Okay. In the preface, you mentioned that the subjects can be taught and learned, but people relation is a mysterious subject that must be learned lifelong. And you ascertain that the mastering people relation, which is a tough, continuous learning, is a key to the professional success. Okay. Will you give some anecdotal example? You have given plenty of anecdotal examples. I know that people can buy the book and read it, but by yourself, can you give an anecdotal example so that the audience can experientially imbibe what it is? People relation.
Can I give you an example which is not in the book?
No problems at all.
Because everybody will relate to it. It's contemporary.
Yeah.
And this is not a political point. I'm just saying it happens to be from the public domain because everybody knows the same facts.
Right.
We, as a country and as a parliament and as a government, wanted to modify the farm laws.
Yes.
It's been so much in the public domain that everybody thinks he's understood what is going on. Now, we know what has happened, and then it went. Now, you see, the idea is not a bad one. It is the implementation that was bad. And people felt they had not been consulted. Somebody else imagined that he won't get MSP. Somebody said, but this is not the real problem I'm having. It's like a doctor who tells a patient, suppose a patient has blood pressure and diabetes and a toothache.
Okay.
And the dentist to whom he has gone says, don't worry, I'll pull out your tooth. I'll just inject something and I'll pull out your tooth. The diabetes man may say, hey, first control the diabetes before you touch him. The blood pressure man may say, take it easy, give him a proper, check that his blood pressure is all right. If you just, the dentist goes ahead, you'll kill the patient. You could kill the patient or damage the patient. So not imagining, in management jargon, this is called design thinking.
Yeah.
Not imagining what that customer or the affected person wants is the reason why many things fail. I'll close with the last example from the public domain. When we were all younger, you remember Hindi was being imposed on everybody. These are all examples which are not in the book, but
I understand.
I'm trying to clarify the point. Some guy from UP, his name was Purushottam Das Tandon. He said, those who don't know Hindi should not be part of this country. Now, you know, people who are in positions of responsibility make statements. I can't assume this is with good intention. Nowadays, also, there are people who make such statements, not on Hindi, but on other things. And that got the South absolutely worked up.
Absolutely.
And you know what happened? And finally, Nehru said, okay, for 15 years, we will let everything. Now that 15 years has become 55 years, it's still carrying on. So understanding, design thinking means understanding what the other guy wants and trying to cater to it. So that's what I took some other examples to.
Right, sir. Thank you so very much. You have gone out of context, but coming from you, we can probably, that also could have been part of the book, but lovely, very well said. One of the finest of chapters that I have read is by Mr. R. Srinivasan, which says managing the inevitable stress. He has gone very experientially going through the pages to detail it as to which are all the ways by which we can go. And he says somewhere that, the examples of chaotic outcome that can happen in factories, particularly in factories and manufacturing setup. Okay. And I believe if anybody buys this, this is one of the must-read chapters for all the CXOs. It says managing the inevitable strain. And then, but my question to you, Mr. Srinivasan, is on the chapter called disagree, but don't be, or disagree, don't be disagreeable. Okay, you had given a example of Dwight Eisenhower. Okay, who though you said that may not have come up to the level of warfare theory of other generals like Montgomery, Patton, etc., but he had the ability to effective communication, and he could hold it. Okay, and then I read at another place about your experience as being the CMC, okay, corporate managing member, a managing committee member, where you were due to become the director of ITC, and because of certain things that the chairman disliked the stand that you have taken and the notes that you have made. Actually, so at one end you're saying about the effective communicator. At another end, we are saying, I don't know, I'm just saying based on my reading of this book, forgive me if I'm saying something wrong. At another end, I see an egoistical person who said that why should he? Okay, and why should he stand like that? Now, see, how do you rate this? What is your take on this, Mr. Srinivasan?
Yeah, delightful question. Thank you, Ms. Nair. So the first, I would say that as a avid student, although it's not in my course program, but I read extensively about World War and made a presentation to the Madras Management Association on World War II. Okay. And so with due respect to the brigadier and the vice admirals and other people present here, I would say that we have much to learn from the armed forces. And Eisenhower knew that he was coping with a very temperamental Montgomery, a very temperamental George Patton, and yet he managed to put it all together. Now, the skills in battle or the plaudits won in battle may not be exactly the same. But Eisenhower combined the qualities required to get the best out of people, whether it was Montgomery or whether it was Rommel or anybody else. And so that was the purpose of sharing a World War example and to say that it can happen at the highest reaches. Now, the second one, with respect to my disagreement with the chairman, who was Y.C. Deveshwar at that time, my purpose was not to go into a clinical analysis of what he was and what he wasn't. The poor man is no more, and I don't want to be speaking. If he was on this forum, it would have been fine, but this is not the place for a debate. The issue is, was there a point of disagreement? And was there freedom to disagree and to disagree with adequate logic? And there was. So the point is, disagree, but don't make yourself disagreeable in terms of the language used or the tone used. And I have no regrets at all in terms of my commitment as a professional, that I gave the right advice and the right suggestion and the right analysis for businesses which were under my charge. I was actually the chairman of Wimpo.
Yes.
And the book refers to the incident where two of the factories of Wimpo were being asked to be closed down, which I told them had been thought through and did not require to be closed down in the industrial dispute meaning of that term. And I said, in any case, there was no tearing hurry because the match business and the Wimpo business had its own board. I had actually taken over from Dr. Setna. Yes. And in the minimum, respecting our corporate governance, the board of Wimpo must be taken into confidence and the matter must be discussed before taking a decision miles away from them. And that was the point I made. And I look back and I think often about it. And a lot of friends say that, could you have skipped and not said anything at all? I said, I can't. I was right there. And so I reinforced the point of disagreeing, but not being disagreeable. And there would be at least 25 or 30 people who would vouchsafe in that room that I was absolutely civil, but I was clear.
Understand.
I don't know if that answers the question adequately.
It answers, but I also appreciate your point that you have no regrets of having done that actually at the cost of your directorship in ITC. That's great. Okay, RG sir, there is a story of Glaxo, Homi Khusro Khan. Okay, he have beautifully explained as to how he has been able to bring about a sea change, a complete transformation within the organization, starting from the MR and going upwards all up to the general manager sales. Okay. Now, change is being brought in 3 to 4 years in today's corporate honchos. Do they have the luxury of time now? That was 4 years. Today's corporate honchos and a century that lives by nanoseconds. Do they have the luxury of time? That's a question.
Thank you. That's a good question. Time is very elastic.
Okay.
We have psyched ourselves to believe that the number of nanoseconds available for a major decision is getting smaller and smaller because of technology.
Yes.
And effectiveness. To be effective, you must have thought it through. In our Vedanta, it says that your mind reacts immediately, what Daniel Kahneman calls the left brain.
Yes.
But your intellect considers the matter and comes to its own conclusion.
Yeah.
And if you don't allow the time for the problem, like a ball, to be passed on from the mind to the intellect, you have an argument with your wife, your mind says, this is enough, I must go and tell her enough. Then your intellect tells you, don't be silly, you've been together for 50 years or 30 years or whatever, and talk it through. And you find a way, both the spouses, to sort it out. So this nanosecond instant decision-making time is a luxury, is going to drive us to be managers who operate with the mind.
Yeah.
And I'm actually arguing the opposite. We need more and more wise people who will operate with their intellect. And the transition from the mind to the intellect is like two servers standing side by side. It doesn't matter whether they're standing side by side or 10 miles apart. It is instantly transmitted. So I do believe that nanoseconds and the pace of technology does not prevent you. You may not take 4 years, you may take 3 years.
Right.
Because technology is also giving you a better solution.
Better solution. A faster solution as well.
A faster solution as well. For example, COVID came. 30 years ago, if you said, can you do something like Zoom? All of us would have laughed. Today, you're able to communicate.
That's right.
So
Okay.
I think using technology intelligently is different from becoming a slave to it. And that's the simple point.
Thank you, sir. Question to RS Srinivasan, sir.
Yeah,
You have
please.
actually, in the whole thing that I have read through this with your simple language narrative that's going that way. Finally, I came to the conclusion that you're a man of quality, safety, and care. So did that take away the aggression in you? That's a question.
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. I think I've felt, although we didn't want to load it with jargon,
Yes.
but the fact is that we respect all the gurus
Yes.
who have contributed to management thinking. And I mentioned Mihai Csikszentmihalyi and the concept of flow.
Yes.
And I mentioned Dr. Deming and Joran and Ishikawa in the
Yes.
quality journey. And I would say that it gave me windows and opportunities of taking groups along. You know, a favorite concept in behavioral sciences is to talk about the Johari window.
Yes, it is.
So the Johari window pane, almost all appraisals are based on the blind spot.
Yeah.
So we go through a cycle where a person who knows you or sees you from a different angle and you don't know it yourself is giving you feedback. And then the rest of the time is lost in argument instead of attending to the task at hand. So I would say that it didn't kill the aggression, but it modified it. It channelized it.
You seem to be more content and more peaceful and at a lot of at peace with yourself type of a person. That's why I asked you this question.
Well, I don't know whether I don't know if you mean or you suggest that the actions, for example, that took place in Tirupati or in Chennai required some hard action.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a tough step that you've taken, but that has proven the point. Thank you. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. RG sir, this is a question. Now, in the chapter, remembering who you are, you end up in saying this, you know. It is perhaps the same satisfaction of sharing that has given me the motivation and energy to write this book and my earlier 17 books. Yes, you said you read it right, 17 books. Then you go on saying that I know that 90% of those who buy books do not read the books, but I still write. Why? It is only because I must do so. So, while lamenting, do you feel that 90% of people who buy RG's book do not read it?
Not RG's book, any book.
No, I'm specifically asking about RG's book.
Well, I haven't got any market research done, but I have found, I take my own experience. I'm sitting in my library. I got surrounded by books here in my home library.
Okay.
And it's very difficult to buy 10 books, read them, understand them, digest them, and hold it in your mind. That's the simple point. Now, 90%, 80%, I won't argue about.
Okay.
It is human nature. Just like if I gave you a thali menu, go to the Taj, they'll give you 10 items on it. You can't eat all 10 of them, even though they are all very tasty.
But
So
you may taste some, you know. You may
may
taste all,
you
but
take a little
more.
bit. That's right.
Okay, that's right.
So 90% of the people, it's not that they buy the new book and just keep it in the library. Unless it's Ram Guha's book, which is 900 pages, you know. Most people will read the first few pages, they'll put a bookmark and then it will sit there. And you try this out, go to your friends' libraries and with his permission, just pull out the books. You'll find the bookmark very early in the book,
Okay.
not late in the book.
Yeah, it stays at that and it doesn't go beyond that actually. Yes.
Because some other book has caught his attention, you know.
Yeah. I have a funny question to you because you have mentioned here the Clementine mirror story actually, in which Winston Churchill was advised by his own sweetheart wife of doing certain things which she didn't want him to do, that become unpopular. Okay. So I liked it actually. So this funny question that I am asking is, did your wife Geeta Gopalakrishnan put a Clementine mirror on you ever?
Absolutely. To my great irritation, I should add.
Can you elaborate this, sir?
Just a moment, please. I'll tell you. There was a young boy he happens to be from Kerala, but that's incidental.
Okay.
Who used to work for me.
Yes.
I'm trying to avoid giving his name and so on because at least Rajan and all will recognize who I'm talking about.
Okay.
And when he became an elderly person, and I was even older, and I had retired actually, he rang me up and said, my son has got admission to Harvard.
Wow.
Can I come and take your blessings? You know, this is an Indian tradition. You go to the elders and take blessings. So I invited him. He came with his son and daughter-in-law because the boy had just got married. And I did the blessing. My wife and I blessed him. And then I said, will you have a drink? Because it is 7 o'clock in the evening.
Yeah.
He said, sure. Now, it is not true of all Malayalis, but this particular Malayali did not require too many milliliters to go high.
Yes.
Okay. Because he was an enthusiastic, energetic sort of character.
Right. Yes.
I think even the vapor got him.
Made him tipsy. Yes. Yeah.
And he then said to me, "Arey boss, you remember on so-and-so day in so-and-so place in this circumstance, when I came with 2 trainees to your room to make a presentation on something, you fired the hell out of me. You were my big boss and you were so tough with me that I felt all my skin had been removed.
Okay.
Now my wife was sitting there,
Okay.
and wives can communicate without speaking. So
Yes.
her eyes went like this. She did that. And I knew that she's giving me a clementine mirror.
Oh, great. Okay. Thank you
As
very
soon,
much.
as soon as this guy left,
Yeah.
I said, do you want to tell me something? She said, what is there to tell? You must have seen that that's not the way to behave with somebody, that he remembers it after 15 years.
But
Clementine.
he needed the help of the alcohol to tell you.
I suspect so, yes.
No, sometimes people actually purposely take it or act as if they have taken it to tell you the story. Actually.
Yeah. No, but
Yeah.
actually, this fellow, I use the alcohol thing only as a light-hearted relief.
Okay,
He
fine.
wasn't drunk or anything of that.
I
Yeah.
understand. Okay. RS sir, Srinivasan sir, this question,
Sure, please.
this is on like in the chapter, persistent pays dividends. You almost says that I was humbled to consider that management is performing art despite our advances in science. A lot of people will disagree with you. A lot of B schools will disagree with you. A lot of authors will disagree with you. We say data is the present oil. Now, all of them will disagree with you. In fact, my last question to RG is also going to be on those lines about intuition. But you say that, are you 100% convinced that management is the art and there is no science behind it?
I'm not going to the other extreme and saying that there is no science.
Yeah.
There is obviously science. And I think the context that I've given, I think you're referring to is the one where quality at Bhadrachalam
Yes, sir.
went up in leaps and bounds. So
Yeah.
we were backward integrated into a paperboard mill, which was feeding into a packaging system, which was feeding into cigarette factories, which was feeding into the markets.
Yes.
And a revolutionary change took place
Yes.
as a result of all these actions.
Yeah.
And when you put that together, this is what I meant when I said that we have engineers, scientists, and competent people at every stage.
Yeah.
And yet, does it take place in perfect fashion? The answer is no. So you need the human element. You need the aspect of unleashing people's energies at every place to get a flavor and an imagination of what the totality looks like.
Okay. Right.
And that is extremely important and is an outstanding experience, because for the chap who's on a paperboard mill to be suddenly told about how the market perceives new packaging seems absolutely remote, and said, does the gold color really matter that much? And you now work it backwards and say, can the intermediate technologies now cope with that change that is taking place? And because it was changing rapidly.
Right.
So that is the context when I said that you still need the people element. And I'm saying that it is an art in as much as it is a science.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Now, Gopal sir, there are two. One is countering the Nirma strategy. And you talk with, you were at that point in time in the exports division, but you are very beautifully elaborated as to how Hindustan Lever has been able to counter that, and how the Unilever has taken it to places like Brazil, etc., to counter similar attempt by guerrilla warfare, attempt by the lower priced competition. It was a lovely narration. And also, I'm very enamored by the wake theory, which was told to you by this the Navy person, on which he says, I learned that wake is a boating term that is used to note the trail of disturbed water that a moving boat leaves. And you go on to say, a leadership wake is like a boat that plows through the water, sometimes have smooth and symmetric pattern, while others drench people and capsize other boats in seemingly disregard to their impact. And effective leaders should leave a wake, okay, which people recall with professional respect and enhancing human dignity and emotion. Very well said. Do you want to elaborate upon this?
Vice Admiral Muralidharan is sitting there saying these are the first things he learned when he joined the Navy. But I never knew of the concept of the wake of a boat, of a ship, until I met another admiral here in Bombay, INS something or the other, Ashwini. And he explained to me that while the structural engineers and the civil engineers and mechanical engineers have many parameters to measure, when a boat is constructed in Mazgon docks or wherever, the way it plows through the water gives you a very good indication whether this is a good and stable boat. And that's all he said. He explained what is wake. And I said, this wake can be applied. It's just not a naval or marine terminology to management also.
In leadership.
In leadership, because some leaders leave such havoc when they have finished their term as a factory manager or a branch manager or a chairman or whatever. The company takes 5 years to recover because something else happened at that time. I was once a little bag carrier for a chairman of Unilever when he was traveling in India. And I asked him, sir, how do you know that your successor has been well chosen by you? You meaning the board.
Yeah.
He said, actually, I don't. The honest truth is, if my successor's successor is thought to be good, then the wake I left is good. He didn't use the word wake, but I'm using it.
Yeah.
Now, the impact of leadership is a footprint that takes 2 generations.
Yes.
If you ask me, because my son has been to Harvard and he has gone to a big job in America, have you been a great parent? I'll say no. When my grandson becomes, then I have probably left a little wake. So I loved that naval terminology of the wake of a ship, and I wrote a little bit about it.
I haven't heard about this. It was a fantastic learning.
Professor Admiral Muralidharan can give
we will bring him to tell us more about
45-minute talk on the wake of a ship.
But thank you very much for introducing wake to us. Okay. Before I come to you for the last question, I have one question which is last to Mr. Srinivasan. Give me a very brief answer, sir. You had mentioned about SEBI, etc., the regulators and all, where you said about the whistleblowers. Okay. But whistleblower is only in the paper. Where in any corporate, whether it is private or government, that the whistleblower theory worked?
Okay. So, short answer.
Yeah.
They're supposed to follow a whistleblower policy. And that's the advice of SEBI and MCA to the corporates.
Right.
Okay. It is incorporated in the annual report. Okay. And a lot of PMs said about it to say that we have a whistleblower policy in place.
Okay.
What has really changed is the Me Too movement, because suddenly the whistleblower policy has been blown.
Yes.
And now people, irrespective of age, are saying, hey, this happened. I don't care how senior that chap is. Now, if you were to translate that, I would say the greatest potential lies within our professionals, because people know what is happening. They are not tapped. They are not tapped. And their intelligence is not being recognized because they are being asked to conform. So if you look at the principles that we are driving us today, we can't wait for ESG goals indefinitely or wait till the magical age of 40 or 50.
Yeah.
We're in a relational database where climate change, corporate governance, ESG goals, gender sensitivity are all clubbed together.
And profit. And profit.
And of course, profit. I mean, that's the raison d'etre. Otherwise, you would not exist in business.
That is right.
But the point is that the information, I mean, look at Punjab National Bank, or you look at any of the crises that have happened. Would you really say that managers did not know what was going on? So long after everything has happened, and it's not mentioned in the book, but the case of Theranos,
yes,
the most star-studded galaxy of board of directors.
Yes.
And yet, I mean, Henry Kissinger, George Shultz, Jim Mattis, you name them. Okay, they were 80-year-olds and they were friends of the grandfather. And Elizabeth Holmes took everybody for a ride. So that's the point I'm trying to make, that it required the grandfather's, rather George Shultz's grandson, to become the whistleblower. Right. And he said, this is rubbish that is happening.
So it's saying like the king has no clothes. Right.
I would say, and sorry, I just complete the sentence, and to say that I'm not so sure whether MCA and SEBI preaching to the corporates are following it themselves.
I understand. And the latest news, etc., is going to say I am also in real search of this Yuga Purush, the Satpurush at Himalayas. Okay, thank you, sir. So now, RG sir, you have actually beautifully explained the earned luck and unearned luck of through the example of Jamshed Irani. It is a lovely chapter. where you have explained beautifully. But I'm not going to ask question on that because I'm going to ask you the last question because we are almost into 7:20. Okay, you have beautifully mentioned all through your narrative. This element of intuition had played through from beginning till end. The intuition had played through. Intuition, instinct, gut, etc. And you had said that how you get it and very beautifully explained. Now, all that is fine. I totally agree with you. In fact, a manager without that right intuition probably may not make a success or may not be that professionally successful. My question to you is, like, any cases where you have intuitively taken a decision that has backfired in your experience? I mean, not to prove you wrong. I'm just trying to ask you because you're such a doyen of experiences and gone through that. Any cases where intuition applied but it backfired? Just to give an
Yes,
example. Yeah.
plenty.
Okay.
I mean,
Yes.
for me to give the impression my intuition has always worked,
Yeah.
it would be implausible.
Okay.
You know, I have been involved in at least the selection of 200 CEOs during the course of my 50 years career or the last 30 years.
Yeah.
And several of them have not worked out.
Hmm.
Now, I ask myself the question, how do you select your CEO?
Mm.
There's a large amount of intuition. It's like selecting a wife. If you go by rationality, your marriage is doomed from the time you start. And the same way, if you just go by CV that he studied here, he did that, you have to meet the person and understand the person's motivation. And all of us know this because we are all doing it.
Yeah.
All of us, if we are humble enough, will admit which
Yeah.
of our intuitions went wrong.
Yeah.
Your son came back after his 7th standard exam with very poor marks. One father beats him up and cuts his pocket money. Another father says, let me see how to help you, son. The two boys develop in different ways. You know, that's intuition. There's no rationality to it. So I am a great believer that intuition without rationality is nuts. Rationality without intuition can work in the first 20 years of your career.
Okay.
But in a leadership role, rationality, don't forsake it.
Yeah.
Layered with intuition. It's like my bread must have some butter on it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's not going to be tasty.
Understand.
And remember always, intuition is the butter and rationality is the toast.
Okay.
Don't try to consume pure butter. Don't try to consume dry bread.
Bread combined at the right level. Okay. Thank you very much, Gopal sir, as well as Srinivasan sir. Really enjoyed talking to you. Now, Madhavji, I have one or two questions on this. Can I take it, or you want to give them back to you?
Only two questions. Please take it anyway. We have done so much.
Fine. Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay. Fine. So I come to the questions from the audience. Though I said that was a question last from me. This is from Rajesh Nair. Most of us know the partner at EY. On the career, the career pivots we are seeing in recent times is an entrepreneurial stint. How does the corporate senior management view failed entrepreneurs? Do you positively value that experience or overlook it? That's a question. Who can take it? RG, will you take it, sir?
Okay. I don't think our society or our corporates have reached the stage of attributing great value to failed entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a pipe dream. It's like many families in India will not welcome their son or daughter marrying outside the community.
Yeah.
A few will. They don't mind either way.
Yeah.
But many families would prefer to get another Nair girl or a Nair boy or whatever. But if the child comes with somebody else, you will accept it. There are many others who won't even accept it. So in the same way, I believe that failed entrepreneurs are not, but it's far better than 30 years ago.
Right.
So
right.
I'm projecting, and I could be wrong, intuitively, that maybe in another 20, 30 years, that failure will not be held against anybody.
Okay.
And a simple metric, when I was younger and looking for a bride, if you said you're working in Hindustan Lever or Travancore Rayon, they would happily give you a job, daughter in marriage. If you said you're an entrepreneur, they would not give you any
very true.
daughter to marriage, you see. Today, If you say I'm doing a startup, you may get the most beautiful girls as your bride. So it's different.
In Kerala, earlier, people used to wait for sales tax officers to marry. Okay, sir. There's a question from Bashir Ahmed. He's asking, where can I get this book? The books are available in bookstalls, but this is from Rupa. More details you can have from Bashir, you can have from KMA. We can give it to you, no problems at all. Now, this is from Suresh Kumar. He's asking this question. 1 second. So the question is, so whether the comparison of manufacturing processes and running of modern factories, especially in this era of computerization, and its effect on workers as well as the managers, work environment over the last few decades are included in this book. I will give this question to Srinivasan, sir, for the sake of it, sir. Srinivasan, sir, please.
Yeah, I think it is partly covered.
Yeah.
It may not be what I would say the acme of 100% lights out night shift factory.
Yeah.
If I might go to one extreme.
Yeah.
But I think it is partly covered in the examples. They were all passing through rapid modernization.
Yes, yes.
And technology change, and with the best of software coming in and the best of automation coming in.
Right.
So the answer is it is covered, but it is not a prescription.
Okay. Okay. Right.
It is meant as an example because it can't cover all possible industries.
I understand. Okay. Yeah, this is the last question of the day. This is from ABK, A. Balakrishnan, Executive Director and our Vice President. He's asking, sirs, rapid automation, robotics, intelligent tools replace the many physical activities. This process will get further accelerated and there will be dramatic changes in manufacturing and service industry. Rules of the game is getting changed. Managing people and ecosystem has changed the point of deflection. Okay, do you think the experience, do you think the experience we all had become more history, which may not influence much in the future? RG sir, you can answer this.
With due respect, Mr. Balakrishnan, I totally disagree. In fact, the purpose of our writing the book is to say the more there is automation and the more of artificial intelligence, the more we are likely to forget human relations. But human relations was important. It is becoming more important. And this is not trying to sing praise for the HR department. I'm merely stating what we tend to forget because machines can't do what human beings can do. Don't ask me about 2100 because none of us will be around. So we leave it to our smarter kids to figure out.
Okay. Can I chip in with one line comment there?
Please, sir. Go ahead.
A lot of this progress can be seen if we imagine a spiral staircase which is winding upwards.
Okay.
Every time you pass a particular point and you look down, you see the XY coordinates and said, this sounds familiar. Somebody else talked about it. And then you take another 10 feet upwards and said, this looks familiar, it sounds familiar, but it's also feeling a little different. And finally, you're up on the satellite. And you need cameras which are zeroing in, and you have a different perspective. So there are a number of perspectives changing with the Z-axis. But the quality of the human resource and the quality of the outstanding human beings remains paramount.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
R. Gopalakrishnan, sir, as well as R. Srinivasan, sir. RG, sir, this is the third book of yours that I am actually moderating for Kerala Management Association. It did a pleasure. There's a lot of learning in this book. I spent 2 solid days on this book going through it. The book actually looks so dirty with all the paintings and pencils gone through it. Some pages are even torn actually because I wanted to ask these questions. Thank you so very much. I hope this book will become an instant success and it will go all over the place, including college students, B school. But I think more than B school, though you said it is good for the students, I feel it is much better for the practicing managers. They are the ones who should read it because there's a lot of wisdom in that. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time.
Thank you.
And I hand you back to Madhav Chandran, our president.
Thank you so much. I must say, the impact of the footprints left by leaders is the legacy that you can create. And leaving the legacy and the learnings to end at a cemetery is the worst thing that can happen to a leader. You explained it in so many words, sir, from where you started at 6:15 today till now. Such life anecdotes by both these doyens explaining core leadership from their own corporate experiences, and SR reading that book, making it so ugly and dirty, it showed. I don't think, RJ sir will ever complain that one person has not read the book fully. All the pages have been covered, and it was more like a book reading session than a book launch session today. And all of us are enjoyed. Of course, I could go through it a bit because thanks to you, I got a copy of the book. But I was actually, glancing through Amazon to see the kind of ratings which we have. Already got 4.5 out of 5 ratings for the book, and there's a limited time offer also for all those who wanted to buy the book. It's there on Amazon. Wonderful session, sir. Of course, it's a feast listening to RJ sir. But today, both of you, the siblings, took us on a real royal, I would say in the positive note, a ride of the book, which was there, as SR rightly said. It's not just for students, but for all of us who are supposedly the experienced lot, who are seeing it all, doing it all. Better take those anecdotes and leave it fully. Thank you so much for that. And I have a request from the secretariat now just to have those books once again held in your hands for a photograph, because they missed that photograph for the media. All four of us, if we can actually hold the book together. Yeah, there we go, Prajit. I think, RJ sir, you got to adjust that camera a bit so that the book can be visible. Yeah.
Left side, sir. Right, that's it. Take it.
That's fine. Yeah, there we go, Prajit. Are you okay? Done?
All right, yeah.
Thank you so much, and wonderful.
On behalf of my co-author, can I thank KMA, Mr. Nair, Mr. Madhav, and all the others who attended. And since there was some interest expressed by some people, I just want to say that because of COVID, we have got what we call a books partner. He is based in Pune and he gives free shipping with a discount if KMA members want to buy.
Yeah.
It will land at your doorstep. Some people are not so good at going to Amazon and punching the buttons.
Yeah.
Rohit, I think you're mentioning Rohit.
Enterprises from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Formal vote of thanks. We have our Honorary Secretary, Charles Accountant Joman George, waiting for the honors. Out to you, Joman, for the formal vote of thanks.
Yeah. Good evening to all of you. President Madhav Chandran, Program Committee Chair SR Nair, and Gopal sir and Srini sir, who has given us almost 1.5 hours of very effective learning time, I would say. Instead of reading out from the book, your rich and unparalleled experience, which has been reflected in this work, on which you spent 2 years and which SR took 2 days to read and make it dirty, has brought in a lot of new insights, fresh insights, doubtless to say. And as for practicing managers, for management students, I'm sure that this would have many pivots. I haven't read the book so far, but I'll surely be grabbing a copy at the earliest possible time and reading it through, completely through, than having the bookmark in the 13th page, as RJ sir said. It's not going to be like that. I'm sure that the way you have very passionately explained how this book was born, and not leaving it, the rich experience that you're sharing, this would be a great boon for all that are going to read this book. And I'm hoping that this would be read and would become a bestseller. And you have new methodologies of reaching out to the people who would like to read this book. And something which you started with, that from the slipping on the greasy corporate ladders, yet with your persistence, perseverance, and then moving on to the richly carpeted corporate corridors and in the excellence of corporate India, has been quite encouraging, quite inspirational. And you're trying to make, RJ sir has been making a distinction between inspiration and instruction. I would say both of you gave us inspirational instructions on how management should be, with a clarion call and a statement that though technology advances, human relations still important to be very, very important. That is started with self, the relationship, and being contextual in all that we do. So altogether, it has been a great experience, and it's so pleasant that this happened on the 66th Foundation Day of IMA and the 16th National Management Day. Thank you very much for sharing so much of your valuable time. And before I conclude, RJ sir, you're really daring. I hope your room is soundproof, because you have been saying so many things about your wife. So you're really daring. And, so it's really nice. And before I say final word of thanks to both of you, the secretariat and all of us there, what you offered your Shishya can be also offered. When can we have a drink together? So thank you so much to both Gopal sir and Srini sir for enlightening and enriching this evening. And surely post-COVID, we look forward to having a physically in Cochin for programs of ours. And let your wisdom, flow, and that let there be more works which would be useful for the entire corporate world. And India incorporated, as today we are seeing worst cases of corporate failures and governance failures in our country. So thank you very much, and wish you both Godspeed and good health in the years that are waiting for you in your lives. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. All the best.
Thank
Bye.
you, John, and a special thanks to Aima and Mr. Anubhav Sehgal also for being here all throughout the session and for making this session happen from the Aima side. Thank you so much. And before I just wind up, let me just two announcements. We have the next startup conversation, StartCon, coming up on 24th February. We have Mr. Sudhir Venugopal, co-founder and executive director of Progno Financial Planning Systems Private Limited, and Mr. Suresh Balasubramaniam, co-founder and CEO of Express Bay Systems, talking to us, coming on stage for a chit chat to share their journey this far. That would be the StartCon session on 24th February, that's on Thursday. And the signature event of KMA coming up soon in the last week of March is the annual management convention of KMA 2022. Conference committee chair and our senior vice president, Ms. Nirmala Lilly, will be informing details to you all soon. And the AGM, the annual general meeting, and the elections to the new managing committee will be held on Wednesday, the 30th of March, 2022 to end this year. So these are the news from KMA, and thank you once again, both the chieftains who are present here and SR and all others. And good night and stay safe. And
Don't forget to include Admiral Muralidharan to talk on what is the